Hello everyone, today we have new video review, and as you can see this time we're going to talk about fresh release from ICM. It's a kit in 1/48 scale, and it's not hard to guess that we have aircraft model which is named as a Jig Dog. As you can see, it's a JD-1D Invader, US Navy aircraft which was used for the drone tugging, and we have a commercial sample in 1/48 scale. It means you'll get exactly the same stuff as what you'll see in this video review, so we are going to open it together and check what is actually supplied in this nice box and what is different from previous Invader releases in 1/48 scale, which we reviewed on our YouTube channel as well. So in case you missed them, you can find them easily just by typing the kit number or kit name. So here we are talking about this Jig Dog, and that's the final shape of this kit. As I said, box is quite big, but model will be big as well, obviously. So here you can see comparison with my hand. We have quite large box art. I mean, it's also as good as a poster on your wall, so maybe it would be a good idea to cut it out and frame it somewhere. I know some modders who actually do this. Next, we continue with some information about the aircraft. So here you can see a short history note and also some information about the plastic kit. So there are 208 plastic parts, and wingspan of the assembled model will be 448 millimeters, which is rather impressive even for a 1/48 scale kit. And on the other side you can see two marking options which are included here, so you will be able to replicate them, and they're quite colorful because of their bright markings on the tail. So now I'm going to cut through these seals which are made with a clear tape. As usual, I remind you that if there is no tape, it means somebody opened the kit before you, and it's a good idea to check whether everything is intact inside, because it might be that something disappeared, you know. And of course, if you want to help us with getting a new kit, something unusual, you can make a small donation with a special donate button on our website, or just by joining our YouTube channel. And believe me, all this money are really handy because they help us to get some kits which we won't be able to review without you. So this is a typical box structure for ICM. As you can see, it's a bit tricky to remove because it's a rather thick box, but I managed to do this, and now we can open the box. We have also a bit of plastic glue here. Let's throw it away. And here we have all the plastic sprues packed into the same plastic bag, so I'm going to move it aside and we will start checking everything one by one. And frankly speaking, parts count is not as big as the, let's say, dimensions of the finished kit, and maybe that would be also a good thing for some modders who are not that confident in their own skills, because they will not have to deal with various tricky sub-assemblies. They actually get a proper kit out of the box, and that's what I like here. So we are going to start with a clear sprue. It is packed into a separate plastic bag, so just give me a second to open it. And I really hope that there is a masking guide for these parts, because as you can see, they have quite tricky shape. So with your own hands and tools, it will be quite a cumbersome work to do. So that's why I would rather prefer to have a masking guide, masking template, so that you can use the right shaped masks without wasting your time. Next, we continue with the first gray plastic sprue. Here we have parts for landing gear wheels. So they look more or less alright for out of the box build, but if you would like to get better features, definitely go for resin aftermarket. Because yes, it will cost you some extra money, but it will also introduce a better look, which will be noticeable in such large size, so that's why I would rather recommend to do so. Next, we continue with the bigger plastic sprue. So here we have some of the fuselage panels. I won't be zooming out so that you can check all this stuff closer, but you can see that molding quality is quite clean, and it's just a matter of combining all these panels together and you'll be good to go. And now we can zoom out a bit so that you can see all these parts in a bit detailed view. Okay, next we continue with the wing sprue. So this one is a bit tricky to remove because of the main or central strut which will be supporting wings, and I will show you what I'm talking about. So here is the sprue, and here is this strut. It gets intertwined with other sprues, so that's why you have to pay attention whether it is breaking some of the other parts. Here we have also two wing halves for one side. External features are quite typical, I would say. So if I zoom in, you can see recessed panel lines and rivets. Note that engine gondolas are separate, and also wing mechanization is separate here. The same can be said about tail wings. As you can see, we have elevators molded separately. And if I flip it over, here inside you can see that we have some of the guiding elements, but frankly speaking, there are not that many of these for such large elements, so that's why I would rather recommend to pay attention while gluing them together, because it's really important to get the right alignment, otherwise you might end up with a bit strange looking result, you know. Next we continue with two identical plastic sprues which are dedicated to engine parts. So I'm going to take one because they copy absolutely the same stuff, and these are the parts for both engines and engine gondolas. So you can see that we have, I would say, frontal section of the engine gondola molded as a single piece part, and that's really important because this section is quite visible, and it's important to have a seamless, I would say, assembly here. So that's why ICM decided to implement it as a single piece part. And power plant is quite detailed for out-of-the-box version, so that's really cool. And of course nobody stops you from adding some wiring for even better features, or maybe you can resort to aftermarket PE parts which will actually solve this thing. Next we continue with more parts. I guess these ones are specific for today's version, so if I zoom in you can see what I'm talking about. We have some cockpit parts and also some of the fuselage panels, and if I flip it over, inside you can see we have also some cockpit features, so they should be visible through the canopy, and that's why I would rather recommend to work on the cockpit. I do not insist on getting some aftermarket PE because it will involve spending extra money, but I would recommend to spend some time painting and weathering all the cockpit parts. Here we continue with Canopy Parts. So they look as good as the previous clear sprue. So again, I would say repeat myself that it's good thing to get some mask set, because otherwise you'll end up with a funny time trying to cover all these clear areas. Here we have another clear, or actually gray plastic sprue for landing gear wheels. We already checked one of this type, so we will skip it. Next we continue with the fuselage halves. So they come on their own sprue, and both are molded together with the tail sections. Obviously no section is molded separately. Note that rudder is also molded separately, as well as these lower panels of the fuselage. And if I zoom in, you can see here that we have recessed panel lines and rivets, and they are beautifully replicated, but I would recommend not to overdo the primer and paint layers, because it will be easy to lose these panel lines, and they're not, I would say, shallow, but still it's better to be on the safe side. And note that if I flip it over, we have some internal features in this kit, and this is a great feature because you can open the Bombay, or they will be also visible through the canopy parts. It's quite surprising, but it is like this on this type of the aircraft. Next we continue with another gray plastic sprue. So this one is, I would say, one of the biggest in the kit. So here we have some parts for the landing gear. So for example, these are main landing gear legs and the nose landing gear. And also we have separate doors for the Bombay, for the landing gear base, for the fuel tanks parts, and also some parts for the nose section. As you can see, they are molded as a single piece parts, so you won't have any gaps in this area. And of course, you can work on landing gear parts because they are, I would say, rather visible part of this aircraft, and that's why it's a good idea to play with their weathering and painting. Next, we continue with engine gondolas and wing halves, and also some of the wing mechanization parts here, and also these are Bombay Doors. So again, the same external features, recessed panel lines and rivets, and few attachment points or alignment points inside wing parts. But note that engine gondolas are nicely detailed inside. It's really important because these are also main wheel wells. So that's why ICM decided to copy a bit more structural features out of the box. Next, we continue with the Decals Sheet. So it comes in an assembly manual. So here it is. We have a nice printing quality. As you remember, there are only 2 markings replicated, but still it is quite fine, I would say, and nobody stops you from searching for some different marking if you have some references. We also have some decals for internal equipment. Unfortunately, there are no seatbelt decals. That's why I was saying if you want more, you can get an aftermarket PE. But be ready that it will be a bit more tricky to apply, especially if you don't have such experience with those parts. Next, we continue with assembly manual. So here it is. Let's zoom out a bit. Maybe close the lenses even more. So it's a typical ICM brochure. It's printed in color. We have short history note and technical specifications and colors chart on the first page. Next, we continue with the parts map, and red color obviously means that these parts will not be used in the build. And note how many parts will actually stay in spare parts box. So it's important to keep track of using the right elements for today's version. And assembly process actually starts with the cockpit, as you can see here. Then we work on the main struts for the wing. We install them into the fuselage half. Then we continue with the nose section. Then we work on another side of the fuselage, and then we join these 2 fuselage halves together. So it's quite an interesting process because, as you can see, these 2 large halves will be actually aligned with help of these struts. So pay attention how they will join together in the front and rear, obviously. Next, we continue with tail wings and also tail surfaces, which are molded separately. There are also some clear parts as far as you can see involved. And then we continue with wing parts. So some holes will have to be drilled. They are pre-molded as a thin one, but still you have to use micro drill in order to have a holes in this space. I guess they will be used for a few tanks. We will see it further in the video review. But next step involves wing mechanization, flaps and ailerons. Then we continue with positioning lights and we install all this stuff to the aircraft fuselage. We proceed with engine gondolas for both sides. Obviously, do not forget that you have to place 100 grams into each so that you won't have a tail seater. So that will be quite a heavy aircraft model in my opinion, and in such size it will be a really tricky thing to transfer on some model exhibition. So be ready for such thing. Next, we continue with Canopy Parts, and here we assemble landing gear. Then we work on engines. Obviously, it will be a repetitive task because you have to do this twice for both sides. And one of them I would rather recommend not to glue this frontal section of the engine cowling so that you can remove it and expose the engine, because otherwise it's just a shame to hide it inside. Next, we continue with the Bombay Doors. You are given a choice whether to open or close them. If you would like to open them, you have to cut them through, but as far as you can see, this version actually does not have such possibility. It should be shut. At least it is displayed like this here. But you can assemble model with landing gear up. So that's the only difference. Okay, but in this case you have to find some really sturdy aircraft stand which will be able to hold such giant aircraft. And next, yes, we have mask templates, and that's really great. Here you can see how they will be applied on the clear parts, even on the nose section. And of course you have to use the liquid masks together with this. And the first marking option comes from 1950s and another one from 1958. Quite bright one with the yellow wings, as you can see. So this kit should be already available. You can get it in any good model shop. For example, Modelimex should have it for sure. Of course, I will be happy to hear your opinion about such a list. Do not forget to write it here in the comment section below. If you like this video, press the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video review as usual. Thank you for joining me today, and bye!